It's super crazy to be meeting here like this again. You may be looking around thinking, Alexis, that's not your apartment. And to that I say, you're wrong, because it actually is my brand new apartment. I know, I'm moving again, but I can explain. I have reasoning. I'm currently sitting in my new bedroom that by the time you're watching this video, I am currently living in because I have moved already. But we're gonna start at the beginning because this is about to be a long and crazy ride and a really fun moving series, but let's take it back and I'll explain how all of this came about. So exactly what she said. I'm moving again. Fifth time's a charm, right? I thought this time around I would do my moving announcement a little differently than I did last time. I feel like last time I just kind of was like, yeah, I moved. Here's my empty studio. And had like a big reflection video on like my last apartment, which, you know, we might get a little reflective in this video, but I kind of just wanted to sit down and chat and talk about why I'm moving, where I'm moving, what's going on. You guys all might have seen this coming, but let's back it up and start from the beginning. So if you're currently unaware, I live in New York City. I feel like that's kind of hard to not be aware of when you come to my channel because every single thing I do centers around New York, but that's where I am right now. And about 11 months ago, I moved from a studio apartment into a 3-bedroom with 2 other roommates. So I currently live in this apartment with my roommate Zach and my roommate Emily and my cat Bennett, of course. I had been living in a studio apartment for about 2 years, and me living in that studio was just like a very circumstantial thing. I never really expected to ever live alone in my life. Previous to the studio, I was living in a 4-bedroom apartment uptown in Washington Heights in Manhattan. And just the way things worked out, I ended up having nobody to live with. I was working a pretty good salary job at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna live alone, because at that point I kind of thought if I was gonna live alone, that was the only time in my life that I was going to have to do that. And then, so I moved into that studio and I went through a breakup, I went through a health scare, I went through a bed bug situation. There was a lot that had happened in that studio. There was a ton of construction going on to the outside of the building that was making my life like a living hell. Come October last year, I decided that I wanted to move. So that is kind of how this apartment came about. I was feeling really lonely. I was feeling like I needed to get out of that space. It was just holding a lot of memories and things that I really needed to let go of and move on to a new chapter in my life. So I moved in with my friends Emily and Zach into this apartment. This apartment that I'm currently in has been great. Like, I don't want you guys to think that I absolutely hate this place, but this apartment just was not what I think I was wanting out of an apartment. I think it definitely was a bit of an adjustment and learning curve moving into a space with 2 other people after living alone for 2 years. And I think there was a lot of pros and a lot of cons wrapped up in all of it, as there is with literally any situation. So even though I've enjoyed my time in this apartment for the last 11 months, it is now time to leave. So the very first and main reason that I am leaving this apartment, because you're probably like, Alexis, it's so soon, like you just moved in, you did all this stuff to this apartment. The main thing is money. By moving out of a studio and moving into an apartment with roommates, you would expect there to be a big price decrease. Like, a studio should be a lot more expensive than the apartment you're living in with your roommates. And even though it was the right decision at the time, we all pay different amounts of rent because we have different rooms. Like, I have the biggest room and it has the most natural light. Emily, my roommate, has the smallest room, no natural light at all. Her window faces a brick wall, but she does have her own bathroom in her room. So there is some trade-offs, but I do pay the most by a significant amount. And I just felt like if I was going to be living in an apartment where I was going to be paying more rent, I kind of wanted more out of it or more of my own space. So I already was kind of leaning toward not re-signing this lease because I just felt like unless we renegotiated how much all of us were paying, I didn't really feel like it was personally worth it for me to keep paying this amount. And it was kind of just like a you live and you learn kind of thing. Are you kidding? My camera is about to die. And I just got all set up to talk to you. Why do I never think this through? Why does my camera always die every single time I like sit down to do a sit down video? It's because of my own poor planning. That's why. So anyways, I was already inclined to not re-sign because I just felt like I was paying a little too much money for the space that I had. If I was going to be paying this much, I would just rather have like a bigger space or maybe a space to my own or with less people, whatever. I don't know if this is everywhere, but at least in New York, I've only ever lived here in an apartment. About 60 to 120 days before your lease renews, you get your lease renewal document in the mail or via email. And it basically asks you if you're going to resign. You sign that as proof that you're going to live there another year. And sometimes, especially if you don't live in a stabilized apartment, they'll raise your rent. So this has happened to me before in pretty much every apartment. In my Washington Heights apartment, they only ever raised the rent like $60, and that was between 4 people. So that was like no big deal. In my studio, they raised the rent $150 when I lived there. This rent was raised $405. After already deciding I felt like I was paying too much with the rent we were paying right now, it just did not feel worth it. We maybe could have negotiated it back down, but it didn't feel worth it. And that was going to add over $100 more of rent onto my portion. And I just did not want to do that. So after that came through, that was kind of just another sign to leave. I can acknowledge that this was kind of a crazy jump for me to go from living alone to with 3 people. And when I moved into this apartment, I got a lot of feedback being like, I can't believe you're not living alone anymore. A lot of people were very opinionated. Some were a little mean. Just saying that I was backsliding, I wasn't independent anymore, like living with roommates was such a sad thing to do, whatever. And while I still don't believe any of that's true, I think that it is perfectly normal to live with roommates, especially in a major city where rent is so expensive. And I'm still just a girl in my 20s figuring things out, and every single one of my friends has a roommate. I was the only one that lived alone. So those comments were kind of out of left field for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize people felt so strongly about like living with roommates. But whatever, took that with a grain of salt. But I do think that this apartment, while it was very beneficial for my mental health when I moved out last year, it's not super beneficial for vlogging. So while I don't agree with any of those comments necessarily, I do kind of see how my channel, the whole vibe and energy shifted when I moved in with people. I felt it in myself, I felt it in my viewership and in my comments. So, you know, there definitely was pros and cons to living here. A lot of the cons had to do with my channel. A lot of pros had to do with my mental health. And sometimes that's just a toss up. But so after putting all these factors together and reflecting on the year I've had in this apartment, I knew 100% time to leave, time to move and go to a different apartment that I am going to save money on. I'm going to have more space. It's going to be better for filming, just all of that. So I found a new apartment, obviously, that you saw at the beginning of the video. And I am so excited to live there, and I'm so excited to show it to you guys. Obviously, I'm staying in New York. It's not like I'm moving to a different state or anything. I've said this so many times. I love New York City. I love living here. I've been here since college. So next year will be like my 10-year anniversary of coming to New York. So next topic of conversation, what is the new apartment like? Where am I going? Staying in New York, obviously, but I am moving into an apartment with my roommate, Emily. I right now live with Emily and Zach. All 3 of us are leaving. Zach is going somewhere else, and me and Emily are going to our own apartment. When I decided to move, it was kind of a toss-up. I couldn't decide if I wanted to live alone again or if I still wanted a roommate, but I knew that I didn't want to. And this was nothing against either of my current roommates. It was more so, I just want less people in my space. I think that is the happy medium in between living alone but also wanting people around, is just one roommate. So me and Emily are moving into an apartment together. This apartment I'm so excited about. I know you saw like a little snippet at the beginning of this video, but it is really, really beautiful. It is such a nice apartment. And I think it's gonna be a lot more fitting just for my life and for my vlog and all of that. We have an office in this apartment that we can use for any creative needs, extra storage, all of that. So there's gonna be more locations to film in. I absolutely love my bedroom. The one thing that I realized I hated about this apartment after I moved in, even though my room has the natural light, this apartment faces north, and that is the worst way to face in the city. I kind of knew that before I moved in, but I'd never lived in a north-facing apartment, so I didn't really realize how dark it could be. Like right now, it is super sunny. There's not a cloud in the sky, but my room is kind of shadowy, kind of dark. Like I can see the sunlight outside and I'm getting light, but it's not directly coming in. And that's because the sun sits in more of the southern hemisphere, I guess. So as it's rising in the east and setting in the west, it's just more on an angle to hit the south facing windows, I guess. I don't know. I didn't really look into the science of it that much, but like if I look across the street at the other apartments, like the sun is fully shining on those south facing apartments looking at me. And in the past, I've lived in a west-facing apartment, I've lived in a south-facing apartment, and my bedroom especially is gonna get a lot of direct sunlight, which I'm really excited about. Also in this current apartment, all of our bedrooms are pretty close together. It's like my room's here, Zach is next door, and then Emily is like right there. In the new apartment, me and Emily are on opposite sides of the apartment. So I'm on one side, then there's the whole kitchen, the whole living room, 2 bathrooms, and then Emily. So we have a 1.5 bath in the new apartment. We'll get into all the details when the moving vlogs start, but this apartment I think is just going to be so much better suited for my current living situation. Having Bennett, having a vlog, being home a lot, working from home a lot, and having to edit in my room. I'm gonna have a whole new desk set up, which I think is gonna be a lot better for editing. After talking about the lighting, now it feels so like gray in here. But like I said, I'm not trying to shit on this apartment at all. It was a really good apartment. It was here when I needed it. I think it came into my life at the perfect time, circumstantially and situationally with where I was at a year ago. But it has served its purpose and it's time to move again. And the rent that I'm paying in the next apartment is a lot cheaper than what it would be if I re-signed this lease. And then it also, I'm getting way more space for what I'm paying for in the next one. So all of it's a series of trade-offs. Moving in New York is a pretty regular thing. This is the 5th apartment that I'm going to be living in New York. When I first moved to Manhattan, I subletted for like 3 months at a place. And then I lived in my next 2 apartments for 2 years each. And then this apartment I have the whole year. We didn't break the lease or anything, so I had it for the whole year, but by the time I move, I'm only going to have been here for 11 months. So what's coming next? A full moving series. By the time you're watching this video, I am already in the other apartment. I am no longer in this one. I tried planning ahead so I didn't have to worry about posting as I was in the middle of the move. Also, if you watched my plan with me this month, I'm posting 3 times a month in October. So there's gonna be a lot going on, a lot of things, but I just wanted to kind of touch base with you guys and talk about this move coming up because it's going to consume a lot of my content over the next month. In the next vlog, I'm going to do an empty apartment tour and show off the apartment and all of the features and everything that we're getting with it. Definitely the beginning of another era of my life in New York, and I really do appreciate everything that this apartment gave me. It gave me a better sense of community. It gave me less anxiety, especially when I was just feeling so alone and anxious in my other apartment. It helped me heal from all of the things that I experienced last year in 2023. I was able to kind of leave those all behind and start fresh this year. And while I will say this year has not been perfect, I've had my fair share of issues and things going on this year, but we have those every single year. Every year there's going to be new issues that arise in anyone's life. Coming into this apartment kind of was a bit of a transitional period and helped me close a chapter on like an old phase of my life and start to open a new chapter. So I need to like give this place a pat on the back for being kind of a bridge to help me slowly ease into just like a new phase of my life. I turned 27 in this place. I am in my late 20s now. I'm experiencing so many different experiences than I did in any other apartment that I've lived in the city. I feel ready. I feel very content and happy with my decision to leave. And I'm definitely gonna miss this place, but I think it gave me all that it needed to, and it unfortunately got a little too expensive, and living with 2 other people made me realize what I actually wanted out of a living situation. And now would I recommend moving every single year? I would not. By the time you're watching this, I've already moved, but in my timeline right now, I'm moving in 4 days. So I have those 4 days to kind of get everything together, prep for the move. I think that's everything. So thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you in the moving vlogs. Bye.